saying about Cashman is he started pretty early. You're saying his dad would have been a slower starter.
Yep.
Do you think that when you did your breeding, were you looking for a particular starting age on your dogs or no?
I like a fast starter, but no, I don't particularly look for that. I find most of them about 6 months. Some of them are laid back and not into it already. But usually around 8 to 9 months, most of my dogs are doing everything I want them to do as far as starting. But and I like that. I don't get too excited about it until they're about a year old. If they're not going by a year old, then I'm worried. And I wonder if he's going to make it. But like I said, one dog there was almost 2. And he come around. When it was his time, it was his time.
I know I've been out there to your shop out here. Got all them trophies out there. That's pretty impressive for as many trophies as out there. You've been doing it quite a long time. Were you more comp hunting? And I know you have show dogs too, and you're showing and comp hunting. Which how did that all come about? How did you get really big into the comp hunting and showing and stuff?
Well, it was just something to do. I'm not really a diehard competition hunter at all. I'd rather pleasure hunt. I don't like some of the politics I run into competition. And to me, it's just about the dog, and I just enjoy being out with the dog.
Yeah.
But I kind of got ribbed into it a long time ago. Guys were, oh, you ain't got a dog, you won't enter it in the hunt. So I put the dog in the hunt for the first time, and I won the whole hunt. So after that, I start putting the titles on the dogs just because I figured I had a good dog. I can know what to the dog. Mm. But I'm not really that much into competition as I am pleasure hunting. I want a dog that can go out and do everything.
Yeah.
And if it does it for me, I'm happy. I really don't have to prove it to nobody else, you know.
I'm the same way on that note. But I know you're judging for some hunts and doing some things with the hunts around. What are some of the coon clubs around here in Michigan that you kind of deal with?
Well, I've been to all of them, and it's really a shame because a few years ago we had 21 clubs in Michigan. We're down to 10 now.
Oh, wow.
Coon hunting is getting to be a bit of a dying sport. But the Millington Club, I was president of that for several years. That's the first club I've ever joined. We belong to the Lakeview Club. The Chesaning Club, I'm at that quite regularly. And them are the closest clubs to me. There used to be one at Sanford here. I was in there all the time, but that one's gone now.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's for a lot of guys what happens, okay, so I went over to the Chesaning one for the Michigan State hunt over there and I spectated some cast. Get a lot of the bickering and stuff going on out there in the cast, and it's just kind of like, you know, I more prefer to get in the woods by myself and just listen to my dog run. I ain't did too much comp hunting stuff. When I got Cashman, I was leaning a lot into the competition stuff. Just didn't end up shaking out. But for guys that want to do the comp hunting stuff, what do you think they should start at? Because I know that's a big step for a lot of people, is switching out of the pleasure hunting into the comp hunting world.
First of all, you got to have a good dog. And the second thing, you got to know the rules. The guys, there's the whole back of a scorecard is all your rules. And there's guys that will just play them rules to try to beat you. And so you need to know what the rules are. I'm like you. It's more fun pleasure hunting. I don't like going out there and playing games. I just like to enjoy my dog. But if you want to hunt competition and you get a good cast, you'll have a lot of fun. It'll be just like a pleasure hunt. Best dog wins. It's a great. And I like watching a good dog no matter who owns it.
Right.
But some of them guys are out to win no matter what. And they're going to try to beat you up and cheat. Play the rule game. Just politics stuff, you know. So know the rules before you go out.
For sure.
You can go to the club and ask for a score sheet. They'll give you one, and all the rules are on the back of it. So study them, learn them before you go to the woods.
So when we're talking about UKC rules, I went through the rules a lot. There's quite a bit of rules there. I think that particularly there's any set of rules that they should be paying more attention to at first, just to help them get their feet in the hunt.
Well, the first thing is to know when to strike your dog and when to minus your dog. Your dog does things wrong, you're going to get minus. Some guys don't like taking minus points, and they don't realize they should. So you want to know what the faults are, how the score system works. And it's a little complicated. I mean, the Lord made the whole world, and He gave us the 10 commandments, 10 rules. And UKC give us a night hunt, and they give us a whole scorecard full of them. So, just so we have a lot to learn, you know.
They're saying about a good dog. What do you think would be some good traits in a dog that might be leaning more towards a competition hunt style dog versus more of a pleasure dog?
A good pleasure dog, to me, it can do everything by itself. And if you've got a real good pleasure dog, he will also make a good competition dog. A lot of competition dogs, guys are getting them where they'll run through a coon, putting them in the hunts. I run into some that are what I call a Me Too dog. They can't do it alone. They just kind of do it with another dog. And they look good with another dog, but you take them out by themselves and they don't really have it. And I think what you need to do to have a good dog, you get it started with another dog. But then about half the time you need to run it alone so it can learn how to do it and not be dependent. A lot of competition dogs, I think they fail on that. They're just constantly hunting with other dogs and they never learn to be a real coon dog on their own.
Yeah. That's one thing that I say on the channel a lot is soloing them out and making sure that they got good solo time on them. I know Cash, he was started 100% solo. I think I had him in the woods with one other pup, and the pup was greener than Cash when I had him in the woods, and he just was completely soloed out. I've trained quite a few dogs that way, where I keep them out of the other dogs if I can help it. Because if I can help to keep them away from the other dogs, I think it helps them a lot. If you do run them with other dogs, they won't back them so easy and stuff like that. Now, I know some guys that get into shocking their dog or buzzing their dog from backing another dog. I think that a dog being independent on its own is probably what you want to look for. And when you come across dogs, what do you think makes them independent? Do you think we can train it into them, or do you think they just got it?
I think some of them are that's their personality. There's a lot of them that guys are using the shock collar to make them independent, but I think a lot of guys are ruining good dogs by doing that. They're overusing that shock collar. A hound is bred to be a pack animal, but I think hunting the dog alone gives it that independence. Hunting it with the pack all the time takes that away from it. So I think a lot of that's just into training, how you train the dog. I think you have to run a dog with another dog. Not always just alone, because it's got to learn to get along with other dogs, and it can learn from the other dogs. But I think it can also learn bad habits from other dogs, depending on what dogs you're running with. So I think it's a combination, training and what you run with and who you run with.
Yeah, for sure. I know that because from my personal experience, and I shied away from packing dogs up to start dogs that way, it's just the dogs that you got them in the woods with. Some of the dogs will keep the pup off the tree and not share.
And that's going to ruin your dog.
Yeah.
And if you're running with junk, you're going to have junk.
Right. So what age do you think that just, if we have them, because if we're going to comp hunt them, they're going to be with other dogs, what would be a good age to start comp hunting a dog, or what level of independence do you think that they should have to where they're not going to pull so many bad habits from some of these other dogs?
If you've got 2 good seasons under a dog, you're ready for anything you want to do with that dog after that. You should be. If you do the dog before that, and most of us do, we get 1 good season. If the dog's doing right, we're putting it out there. But the dog is still learning and can pick up a lot of habits yet. But once you've got 2 seasons under that dog, you should have that dog where he's going to be.
Yeah, it really solidifies them, I feel, if you get a couple seasons on them and they're doing what they're going to do. And so how much pressure do you put on the dog when we're starting them up? How often are we putting them in the woods? How often are we knocking coons down to them or stuff like that?
I've never knocked down a lot of coon over the season. I never felt I needed to, if the dog's got what it takes. And it just depends on the dog, because every dog is different too, you know.
Right, yeah.
But I like to hunt. When I'm starting a dog, I like to have it in the woods at least 3 times a week. And that just so it don't backtrack or forget anything it learned from the last time, it just keeps it going forward. I can't always do that, but I try to.
So the cage, I know one big controversy out there in the coon hunting world is the cage. We show the cage too many times. We get the dog worked on the cage too many times. It can ruin them. What do you think about that?
I think it can if you overdo it. If you've got a 2 or 3 year old dog you're still working the cage with, that dog don't need it. I think the cage is a really good way to start one, because when that dog goes in the woods, it don't know a difference from a deer or a coon or a rabbit, or it's just something out there. You've got to teach it that this is what you're supposed to go after. This is what we want. And I think the cage is a really good way to introduce him. I do that. I show them a cage until they get where they want to fight that cage, and they'll bark up a tree at the cage, and then it's time to quit. Once they know what they're after, what they're looking for, it's time to quit, because if you keep going, you can overdo it. It gets too easy, they just want to do that, and you want them to have to go out and work for it.
For sure. That's one thing that the last video that I made, that's what I was kind of talking about, is when I'm training dogs, I use the cage to kind of drive home the idea of this is what you're supposed to be doing. And then once we get it, I'll call them on the channel here as one and done processes. So like once we get accomplished what we needed, then we shut it down and we don't need it and we move on. And I think that's something, some guys get caught up in this. I know I knew a guy that I was hunting with for a while. Every single time we went out, he wanted to show a cage every single time. And I'm so you're 10 times of this. I think they get the idea.
Yeah, they don't need it no more. Now I'll use it if I get a dog that I might run into the tree, bark a couple times and leave. Well, I can't get that coon.
Right.
So what I do is I got it on a rope. So when he starts to leave, I start to lower the coon. Gets his attention, he runs back to the tree, and then pretty soon he's afraid to leave, because if I leave, that coon's going to come down, and he wants to stay. And then it's time to quit. It's time to go do the real thing.
So when you're first starting off, let's say a dog maybe has had some tree work on it with the cage, a little bit of cage work, a couple drags, something like that, and we start putting it in the woods. How close or far are you letting that dog go, or how close or far are you hunting adjacent to the dog?
Most of my dogs, they don't go, well, if I'm hunting with another dog, they'll go with the other dog.
Right. Yeah.
But when I'm not, they usually stay pretty close to me, because when a pup goes out, he's not confident. And they keep checking in, see where you're at. If I don't see him for about 5 minutes, I'll whistle him in. But I don't, and I see this mistake, a lot of people, as soon as that dog's out of sight, they're calling their dog. That dog has to have enough room to go out and find a coon. And usually my dogs, well, like that dog in the picture he was talking about, he'll come in twice. He'll run, if I turn him loose in the woodlot, he's going to hunt the whole woodlot. He'll come in twice. If I don't catch him the second time, the next time you hear him, he'll be barking someplace, because he's going to find a coon. That's what he's out there for. So they'll go deep when they have to, and I don't discourage that.
Right.
Although it's getting a little harder today, because the way the deer hunting thing is and the popularity of landowners don't want nobody on their place, it's hard to keep a dog in a certain woodlot, without them going out. So you got to be careful where you hunt. So
I know one of my subscribers on here were kind of talking about he's wanting to get his dog to go deeper. I know he's running a feist, but what do you think we can do to get a dog to go ahead and go deeper? I know I have my own theories on the way that I do it and how I tell them on here on the channel, but we'll definitely hear it from somebody with a lot more experience than me. How will we get a dog to get off and get gone and get off away from us?
Well, one thing, if he's not under your feet and he's out hunting, if he's under my feet, I discourage that. And I'll kind of keep bumping him and get out of here, But if he's out there hunting, then I'll put him with another dog that'll go deeper, and he'll learn from the other dog.
Take off and get out there.
Yeah.
Now, being that, well, I know a lot of the guys, they want to start with other dogs. There's very few guys that get put in a situation where they don't have other dogs to get going with. And you've probably started dogs on your own and with other dogs. What do you think would be best advice you can give to somebody who is starting a dog all by itself, where there's no other dogs that can get involved in it.
Makes it a little harder because it's easier with a good dog, but what I would do in a case like that, I do some nuisance coon trapping. I take the coon up to a wide open field, I turn it loose, let the dog get excited, hold the dog, turn it loose until the coon gets out of sight, then turn the dog loose. And that dog is gonna start learning that, man, it's out there, I gotta go find it, and it wants to go. When it will do that, then you're ready to go back in the woods where the dog don't, well, I'll turn the same coon loose, but not show it to the dog. And when it'll go out, find the track and run it without seeing the coon, then you're ready to go to the woods and start walking that dog and letting him find his own coon.
Yeah, see, what you were just saying is what I tell these guys is what I call cold starting or surprise drags. And when I do my drags, I couple the drags with the cage work or the cage work, and it's like what you just said. If they're not aware that the coon's there, and then you cut one off for them, and you bring them in behind them, and the dog doesn't really know there's a coon out there, and you put them out there, and they'll go out there and they'll start their own track, and they'll go out there and tree it, and that's what I kind of talk about cold starting for the people here on the channel. But that's kind of what you're saying, right?
Yeah, I'll take a nuisance coon I catch or something, and I'll set it out in the field. And then I just take the dog out, turn it loose, and all of a sudden runs into the coon.
Yeah.
And it'll bay it up. I tie the dog back, turn the coon loose, and just wait a few minutes and turn the dog loose.
Yep, because that's I was literally just the last video I did was I was talking about a lot of this stuff. Is the way that I try to do it is I'll call it having them warmed up, which is like they know the coon's there, you got them tied back, they're barking at it, and then you cut it out, and then send them after it. Or the opposite version, or kind of how I test this and see if they're really ready, is the dog has no idea that it's out there, or no idea that it's been cut loose for them, and we just take the dog and cut it out there behind it.
That's my second step.
Yeah.
After the dog knows it can run that, if you know that dog can run that track, you know it can find it, I don't show it no more.
Right.
Because you can overdo that too.
Yep.
Just turn the coon loose, then go get your dog, come back, turn it loose, and like you're going hunting, let it find the track and run it.
Yep.
You can overdo too much of that in the cage.
Yeah.
That's a good starting tool, but you can overdo it.
And I know the overmuch. So what I say here on the channel, and I don't know if you agree with it or not, is I try, if I can, I'll do 3. I'll show them 3 cages, but I'll try to get as much work out of that cage over a course of about 3 days. And if they don't need another day of a cage, they don't get another day of a cage. And I think that a dog will reach a certain level to where if you show them a cage, you're just doing it a disservice, because they have to make that leap on their own to get out there and do it without the cage.
Well, I think every dog is different. Some dogs, I mean, they'll take right out of that cage the first time they see it.
Yeah.
Other dogs, like, what's that? I don't know what I'm supposed to do with it. I think everyone's a different level, and you have to judge that dog for what he does before you know how many cages to show it.
Yeah.
So it kind of depends on the dog.
Yeah, that's true. Because I mean, my feist Tilly that I have down here, I've showed her probably about 4 cages so far. Cash, he only seen 2 cages ever, and I think, and I was the one that was down here, and then the one that I got on my own over there to the place I was training him at, and that's all it took for that dog particularly was 2. I've seen dogs only need 1 or even more than 3. Well, like you said, you have to be able to judge the dog, right? And what are some things that you can look at a dog and go and have these judging moments where we say, okay, he don't need no more of this, or he needs more of that? What do you think?
Well, I'm going to back up one thing on that cage again. I had a friend had a dog here, and every time, like you said, they'd show the coon in the cage, and the dog got so bored with the cage that he quit hunting completely. He had no interest in treeing, and that's an example of overdoing.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to mention that too. You can overdo. And I gotta apologize, I forgot your question there.
Oh, my question was, when we have to have a good eye on the dog and a good judge on the dog, and that's one thing that I tell these guys a lot, is we have to be able to look at a dog and know, where we're heading with the dog, what behaviors that we're getting out of the dog that tells us when we can move on, when we need to go back and try something again? What are some things that you think that you look at in a dog and go, he's ready, he's not ready?
Okay, if that dog is just going up and looking at the coon and giving you a little bark, he's not ready. If that dog is getting at that coon in the cage like he wants to eat it, like he's hates coon, you don't need no more cages. Right. He's ready.
Yep. And I think everybody out there can greatly appreciate it. I know you do the German short-haired dogs, you do the beagles, and you do the blue ticks, and we have, you know, there's not very many guys out there who've been doing it as long as you. How long have you been doing it, and when did you start your kennel out here?
Oh, well, I started doing it probably just shortly after I was born with my dad. I remember Dad carrying me out of the woods at 4 and 5 years old. When I got into high school, I mean, gee, when I was 12 years old, I was out hunting dogs by myself. When I got into high school, it was mostly Dad's dog then, but in high school it was my own dogs. I was getting my own dogs. And I've been doing it ever since, you know, and just, I love dogs. I always have since I was a little kid, and I just been into it. And I've had all the different breeds. I mean, I've had black and tans, I've had the red dogs, I've had English, I've had walkers. Color don't matter to me. It's just the right dog that does it right, and I enjoy a good dog, and no matter if it's a bird dog or a hound.
Yeah. So what I'd say, as I say here on the channel, is if a horse would tree something, I'd hunt it. Because it don't matter to me. I've owned so many different breeds of the dogs. And we get guys that get stuck in the rut of, this is my color, this is what I'm going to run. You think that's probably a bad idea to be that way?
Depends on what you're doing. If you want to have a kennel, and you got all kinds of breeds, people look at you like you're just a dog jockey with a bunch of dogs.
Yeah.
If you want to be a breeder and have a certain thing, you have to stick with a certain line and a certain type of dog. If you just want to enjoy a dog, you don't need to get stuck in a rut, because there's good and there's bad in all the breeds. Find one you like and enjoy it. Because there's, I don't care what breed you get, there's good ones and there's bad ones. I got blue ticks. I've seen some pretty junky blue ticks. I've seen some pretty great blue ticks. But I've seen the same thing in walkers and black and tans and all the other breeds too.
For sure. So I know I've been a big fan of blue ticks forever. I started on blue ticks. I went to be a big walker guy for a really long time. I was really into the walker stuff. Got into the plot stuff a little bit. Picked up an English dog. I think Catahoulas and black and tans, probably about the only dogs that I ain't owned. But I've been in the woods with them. And like you said, if it's a good dog, it's a good dog. Now, I have my preference on a good dog. We kind of talked about this a little bit the other day, but what do you think is a good dog for you? If you were going to see a dog and you go, that's a really good dog.
I like a dog that can go out and find the track and get struck. I don't want to have to show the track to the dog. I don't want to walk it onto the track. I want that dog to be able to go out and find its own track. And I want that dog to tree, and I want him to stay treed no matter how long it takes me to get there. And if he can do that, I'm going to enjoy that dog. And some dogs, they can't get a track, they make a lot of losses, they can't hold on to it, or some people mistakenly call them coal tractors. They stand on their head and boo-hoo in one spot all night. That's not a coal tractor. To me, that's a dumb dog. If you're going to run cats and bears, you need a coal tractor, but you need a dog to hurry up and get the bear jumped. You don't want him standing on his head all day. So I don't want a dumb dog. I want a dog that can move a track, move it good, don't make a lot of losses, and get to the tree and stay there until I get there. If he can do all that, to me, he's a good dog.
Sounds about right, man. And then, so one thing that goes around out there, and I've seen on a couple other podcasts, a lot of guys talking about a dog having brains. And what quantifies that, if you were to say, or how much brains do you want a dog to have, and what way? Because I kind of look at it in two different ways. I look at it as, we have a dog that's got a lot of brains hunting wise, and we got a dog that has a lot of brains people wise. And if you've been around a lot of dogs, I think you can know the dog that's constantly looking back at you, constantly in your business, paying attention to you all the time, versus a dog that's paying attention out there in the woods. And what do you think brains kind of?
Well, again, we go back to that dumb dog that stands on his head.
Yeah.
That's a dog that ain't got a lot of brains.
Yeah.
Nightmare, the one there in the picture there, to me that dog had a lot of brains. I could show him something once. He treated a possum, and he got in trouble. Never treated another possum. Get in trouble once, he learned. He treated a house cat in the hunt, and got scratched with the hunt. And we put my poor little kitty out here in a cage, and I put it up a tree, and he barked at it, and I lowered it down and poked him one time. He never treated another cat. That's, to me, brains. He learns fast. He learns, and he learns what to do and how to do and what you want him to do. And that's brains to me.
And so one thing that was floating around here in the social media there for a while was the mystical coon, right? So a coon that you just can't get it treed, or keeps outsmarting your dog, or just giving you a big headache and giving the dogs a big headache. So what's your take on a mystical coon, and what kind of makes these, or if they're even real?
Well, I think there's some out there. We had one we called the ghost coon one time, and I figured out what he was doing finally, and we got him. And he was an old gray coon with his teeth all fell out of his head. But he'd got by a lot of years for just outsmarting the dogs. But usually, like I had the one, he'd get into a water hole, and then he'd go into a hole and disappear. Or he'd have a certain tree or a den tree, and he'd make it to. And that coon was smart enough, knowing them dogs around him, to try to get to the safety spot. Yeah. And they knew the safety spot. And sometimes it's hard to figure out what that safety spot is. One would go to a bunch of grapevines, run the grapevines, jump off the other end, and go into a hole. And we finally figured that out. But for a long time, it was like he just disappeared. We couldn't figure where that coon was going, But there's some coons out there that they're a challenge.
Yeah.
And then, to me, they were the front ones that get a personality and the fun to run. Yeah. And you'll remember that coon when you're my age, and you might have run him 30 years ago, and there might be 1,000 coon between there, but you'll remember that one.
Yeah. Always remember them ones that are slick, man. Yeah. I've had a couple of them that I've ran. Now, so one thing here, I think, not to kind of get off the mystical coon thing too much, or out of that area, but how long are we letting dogs run these tracks? Because that's a big thing. A lot of people, if he's running too long, he's probably running trash, or they'll zap him out of there. And I've sat on dogs and let them run, 2-3 hours, and they finally turn the thing up. And how long are you letting your dogs run these?
Trust your dog. If you don't get by a highway or someplace where you have to pick him up, I don't. I know a guy that I hunted with him competition quite a bit, and boy, if it was 100 yards, it must be a deer, it must be a deer. Okay. And then a few more yards and they'd sit on a tree. I've had we had a coon over here, and it got one of my dogs killed when it crossed the road. But that coon had run, and we had a hard time treating it. And it was a big old boar. And the night the dog got hit on the road, the other two dogs that I had loose, they treated him. And it was a 1.5 mile race before they treated him. When you're out on a feeding track on a coon, that coon, sometimes down here where they get in the cornfield, they might just work one corn. You get up in the UP, they might go a long way to get to a cornfield. So some of them tracks are real long. And it's no such thing as a 100-yard coon and he's up. Some of them coon will really cover some ground. So I don't put a time limit on it. No. If them dogs are working, they're trying, I give them the benefit of the doubt. Might be a deer. If they prove it's a deer, I put the shock collar to them. Yep. But if I think it's a deer and I don't have the proof, I don't shock that dog, because I've seen too many dogs ruined that way. Yep. People get in a hurry and they bark too many times too fast and it ain't up a tree. Oh, that must be a deer. Yep. And they start shocking, and now they got a dog that won't run anything.
Yep, and that's kind of the same. We're kind of on the same page here, because this is kind of what I tell these guys is let them run. Now, I didn't used to be that way. I used to, if you ain't putting something up in 20-30 minutes, I was starting to get heated. I was getting pretty mad.
And most coon will go up that fast.
Yeah, a lot of them will. If the dog keeps a lot of hard pressure on them, they can kind of get them to go up within a decent amount of time. Other times, and when we're starting dogs, and that's one thing too, is kind of what I talk about. And when we're starting dogs, I may have said this on channel or not, they ain't really got a lot in them to keep that amount of pressure on the coon. And the coon will stay way, way out ahead of them, and that just lets the coon run, kind of do whatever it wants. They ain't got so much pressure to get put up. And so it might take a lot longer for a young dog to get one up. And then you feel the same way about
Oh yeah, we had, actually it was flooded that year down the road here about a mile. And that coon would make a run back to the woods, but it wouldn't tree. It'd come back and get in this water.
Yeah.
And it'd bog the dogs down, then it'd make another circle and come back in. And I seen the coon about 3 times, so I know they were still on that coon. And we finally got it. It didn't want to go in a tree in that woods, but it come out the other side of the water hole, one little lone tree, and we treated it there. But it bogged down and bogged down and bogged down, and made several circles before we could get it up a tree. It took a while.
Yep, and that's one big thing that I say on the channel. They'll get stuck in a circle on them, especially if we got these younger dogs. I feel like the coons will put them in a loop, and they'll just loop it and loop it and loop it. And a lot of guys will think they're running a rabbit. A lot of guys will think this or that. But I think if you've had a lot of GPS time and watched a lot of tracks ran, you kind of can feel it in your gut. That's definitely a coon. He's just putting boots on them. And like you said, they bog down in the water, and they really will. And I've had them. I love running swamp coons. That's my favorite thing to do, and I think that's why I was such a big fan of Cashman, because I put him in the water, he'd come up. I mean, I'd let him run for a good long time right there at the beginning before he got a lot of speed on him and stuff. But he put him up right out of the swamp, ankle deep water, and you just go, yeah, that's pretty impressive stuff. And I like running the swamp coons because a lot of times they do give them a hard time. They do give them a hard run, and I know you have Beaver Flood Nightmare.
Yeah.
Was he a big swamp dog?
Oh, he didn't hesitate for water a bit. He loved it. I could put him right down in the swamp where he was swimming, and he'd still come up with a coon.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favorite things to do. I don't know if it's just being a Michigan guy, having a lot of swamps to get run in. I know I've had a couple dogs, you cut them loose, they'd find the water. If it was 2 miles down the road, they'd get in the water somehow, and the coons just get in the swamp and lose them dogs. And I think when we get up around here, maybe not so much this north, I'm kind of from downstate more, get a lot of high pressure on the coons, and they know I'll get in the swamp and I'll lose them dogs. And a dog that'll turn up in the swamp is a really good dog. And if you turn them up in the swamp and get them out on the dry land, it's almost like they're impressively good, especially if they do well in the water.
I watched a Nightmare in a competition hunt, and we're standing high up on a hill, and this was up almost to the bridge up north by Indian River, and we're looking down on him, and there was a walker dog with him, and they run 4 circles back and forth on this big swamp, or big pond, I should say. And they're barking out in the middle of the water, swimming. And they finally, on the one end of it, a big pine tree, they finally treed him. We seen the coon, but it was just, most of that race was all in the water.
Yeah. And I had my boots filled for quite a long time.
Another thing I wanted to mention, you were talking, the dog is on treeing. I see so many people that they don't see the coon. They think the dog is slick treed. I've seen coon where I swore it was slick, and I walked away and looked back and see eyes. I mean, them things can hide.
Oh, yeah.
And I see dogs getting punished for slick treeing.
Yep.
And pretty soon, it's to the point where the dog won't tree at all.
Yep.
If I don't think the coon's there, I leash the dog and walk away. I don't punish the dog.
Yep.
If it's a possum, I don't even like to punish you for treeing a possum. Yep. I might knock the possum down and then punish the dog. So it knows it's getting punished for a possum, but not punished for a tree.
Not on a tree.
I've seen too many dogs get ruined from treeing by people overcorrecting.
Well, see, this is what I talk about, and this is what I talk about on the channel is, all right, so obviously I was a young, dumb kid, and I got my hands on a lot of dogs, and, I've whooped dogs for slick treeing, and slick treeing, and slick treeing, and slick treeing. It wasn't until I was a lot older and had a lot more time on me that, like what you just said there, they're up there. And what really sent that home for me is I had this coon, and it was leaves were on, and I was training, and I cut a coon out. And there was only one tree, and I watched the coon go to the tree and go up the tree, right? And the dog went over there, and he slammed put on that tree. I could not find that coon.
Yeah.
I couldn't find him. I shined that tree for an hour, left the tree, tried to do some hunting, come back, dog treated again. I'm looking up there, I'm like, I know that thing's up there. It took me about 2.5 hours to find a crick of an eye.
Yep.
And if I wouldn't have been a hunter as long as I had been, I wouldn't even have known that was an eye, because I had a couple people with me help me shine that tree, and I'm like, I just seen him blink right there, and it was like half an eye, and they're like, oh, that ain't nothing. I'm like, I'm telling you, he's right there. And I sent a couple bullets up in there, and he finally started moving, and I just thought to myself, if this would have been a wild one that I didn't cut loose and see go up that tree, that dog would have had it for being slick. So I kind of really laid the pressure off of whooping them for being slick, or shocking them for being slick, or even the possums, like you said, putting them in trouble on the tree is something that can really put I call it ripples in a dog. It causes them a lot of issues going forward, and it just gives you a bigger headache at the end of the day, I think.
We was talking about a coon a little while ago that I call the ghost coon.
Yeah.
And that coon, finally we treed him, and that tree wasn't 8 inches through. Ash tree, November, no leaves on, and no coon. Yeah. And I mean, I looked and looked and looked, and no coon. And I mean, I figured she slick tree. Yeah. I leashed her and I walked away. I looked back and there's eyes looking at me. I turned back, went back to that tree, and I spent another 20 minutes. And finally, he was flattened right out. I could see the rings on his tail. Yeah. And I made out the coon. But I would have swore that was a slick tree. Yeah. And guys will punish a dog for that, and they're actually punishing their dog for treeing a coon, and they ruin the coon dog.
Exactly. And I have a story about Cashman. It was a similar thing. I had him out. He put one up in a swamp. It was a full tree. I go out there and I look. I shine and shine. I could not see it, and I go, you know what? I ain't giving up on this dog. I know this dog is doing his business. I know he's got something up this tree. So I backed way out in the swamp. This was like his first 1 or 2 coons that he treated. So there's a lot of potential for him to be slick or something. But I backed way out in the swamp about 30 yards, and I shined and I seen the eye. And actually I popped that coon out from way out in the swamp. And I had the Cashman leashed up in there. I got it on video, this coon that I'm talking about. And I had to run through the dang swamp, ankle deep water and all the thickets to get back in there for that. I didn't know if I hit the coon good or what. Come down there and whoop that dog being leashed up. I got in there, I had him hit good, and it was all good, but it's very easy to just look in that tree and just go, okay, you're getting in trouble. Yep. Because there ain't nothing
and
up
I
there.
see that happen a lot,
Yep.
and a lot of times it's a mistake, because the dog thinks he's doing right, and now he's getting punished for it. So.
Yep. And I've had dogs do that, and one of the dogs that I was really big on, being pretty upset about him coming up slick, what he turned into is he'd run off. When I come close to the tree, he'd take off. And I had the biggest problem on doing that issue that he probably wouldn't have had if I would have been easier on him being slick. Yep. And I think it just goes a long way. And anything for these guys that ain't never coon hunted, ain't never been in the woods, ain't never been around no dogs, any advice for these guys on getting started up?
Oh yeah, they're missing a lot. They need to get out there. Find somebody, and most people will be willing to take you. Yeah. They like somebody to go out with them. Find somebody and go out and just try it. See if it's your cup of tea. It's not for everybody, but you get out there and listen to them dogs at night. It's like listening to music on the radio. It's just really enjoyable. And it's fun with somebody else's dog, but when it's your own dog, it's even more special. Yeah. You can't beat it. It's a great sport. I grew up hunting everything with dogs. My dad, back in the day, we had pheasants everywhere. We take the gun to school on the school bus, and then we hunt our way home. And we were allowed to back then. And I just grew up hunting. And then we had one dog to run everything. Well, now I got dogs to run everything, different dog for each thing, because I love it. It's just a great sport, and a lot of people today don't have the opportunity like I had when I was a kid. I could go anywhere, farmers didn't care. Deer was a 2-week rifle deer season, other than that, nobody cared. Now it's a year-long season and nobody wants you on there, so it's harder. A lot of young people don't get the chance today. And I think that's a real bad thing. You're missing out on a lot. Somebody will be happy to take you, go out and try it out. And if you like it, then go ahead and get a dog.
Sounds good. I think we'll wrap it up here, Jim. What do you think?
Sounds good to me.
All right. Well, I really appreciate you having me down, Jim.
Thank you.